Hello, everybody, and welcome back. I am so excited to introduce to you Lynne Hurdle, who is my today's guest. Lynn, how are you?
I am very well, Sarah. How are you?
I am thrilled to have you here. I'm excited to talk to you in a capacity of an executive coach, in a
Yes.
capacity of a mother, in a
Hmm.
capacity of a visionary,
Oh,
and also in a capacity of something that is so, it's been with us for centuries, for decades, but I think right now we're really reaching the peak when it comes to conflict resolution, especially diversity and inclusion.
yes.
So, yeah, 35 years of experience. I love in your description, you say, serving from Harlem to Hong Kong, from South Bronx to South Africa, and
Yeah.
everywhere in between.
Yes.
So
Ah,
I'm excited to have you here.
thank you. Really excited to talk with you. That's the excitement for me is just to have the conversation because when we met, the conversation just flowed so easily and naturally. So let's continue.
Exactly. Yeah, we met just a couple of weeks ago, which
Yeah.
now feels like a lifetime ago. It was a professional event, but I remember what really struck me, in addition to your energy, that you just felt when you step into a room. It was your story, and if you don't mind sharing that, if we can just start there. There was something about your story and a vision of putting into a book and then on a big screen in a
Mhm.
way.
Yeah.
uh,
Yes. So it's an interesting place and time for me in my life because I knew from the time that I was 3 years old that I wanted to be an entertainer. In fact, I'm a Leo, so I wanted to be a star, not just an entertainer performer. And so I did everything from dance classes to I went to school for singing, and I was writing plays and uh, by the time soap operas by the time I was 8 on, and I just knew that this was something that I wanted to do. And so I was living with my parents and my sister in the Bronx. We lived in the South Bronx until I was 7, and then at 7 my parents decided that they wanted a better education for us. And hey, unfortunately, the deal was that in the white neighborhoods there was a better education than where we were, which was predominantly African American at the time. And so, after taking us back and forth on the subway to different schools, and my mom decided, we need to live in an area where they can just go to school. So we moved up to the Northwest Bronx, and I was at the time 17, and I was coming home from high school, and that required a long subway ride and then a bus to blocks within my home. And about a mile away from my home, the bus stopped, and the bus driver was not opening the door. And the bus was really crowded, so I had to kind of get up to look and see through the window that there was a mob of young white males with red bandanas and baseball bats charging the bus. And I looked around, and as I said, the bus was crowded, and I saw myself, another teenage male, and the bus driver were the only Black people on the bus. And I knew we were in trouble. And so they were trying to get the bus driver to open the door for us to come out, and he wouldn't do that. And then they started to try to turn over the bus. And the only thing that stopped them is that across the street another bus came, and it was actually filled with African American students from high school that was a little further on. So the bus driver opens the door, I jump out. So there's this young man who I found out actually went to the same school as me. We just hadn't met yet. And he was terrified, not just because of what happened, but he literally had moved into the neighborhood a week before this and did not know how to get home from where we were. And I'd been there 10 years now. Getting him home was not a problem through the back streets. But I can remember on my way back to my house, I heard this voice that said, I don't know how, but I think I'm supposed to do something about bringing people together around this problem. And I thought, no, I'm going to be a star. What do you, I'm not, what? remember it so very clearly. And when I had already planned, I had gotten accepted into Syracuse University as a theater major. I went there. And by sophomore year, they had a new program called Nonviolent Conflict and Change. And I switched majors into that program. And I've been working in the field of conflict resolution, diversity, inclusion, all of that really since then. And my book is really about how I was teaching conflict resolution skills to my sons growing up, and about what I learned in the work and how I continue to do the work. And so I say I'm at an interesting point in my life now, because now I decided that I've learned so much about conflict. I want to bring that into what I really always want to do, which was to be in the entertainment field. And so I've written a television pilot that I'm shopping around, and my intention is to actually build that side of the company and make it not just the coaching and keynoting and workshops and conflict resolution, including diversity and inclusion and equity, but also to bring shows that show the complexity of conflict in so many people's lives, and how we move through conflict and how we can do it in better ways. Yeah. So that's what I'm at.
My goodness, there are a couple of different ways that this conversation can take us. It's like a big octopus, but I trust that at the end it all circles back.
Yes.
Do you mind if we go back to that moment when you heard the voice on your shoulder, in your heart, in your soul, whisper, this is going to be the work?
Yeah.
At such a young age of 17, I mean, as a white woman myself, you know, I'm European.
Right.
Coming here, it was easy to say at first, oh, I don't know what I don't know, and I'll just be curious. And if I make a mistake, I am sorry. I even participated in very different communities where it was, you know, I don't see a color was the way to go when you express something. And then over the years, the more time I spent here and the more that I immersed into the diverse community, I was like, this is the total opposite. This is so wrong not to see something that is so beautiful, that sets us apart in a way that brings our uniqueness out, and that it makes this whole community so unique and beautiful.
Yes.
And then immersing myself in coaching and spirituality, I remember hearing over and over again the narrative of, oh, you alone control the narrative of your life. You alone create the path and everything else. And I'm like, oh yeah, it feels great because it allows me to take a little sweeper and sweep everything underneath the rug, right? And then last year happened. And I was like, holy shit, there is so much that we refuse to see, that we don't want to see, that we don't want to talk about. I know for myself, it's like, wow, there's still so much that I have to learn, even though I have always considered myself as an ally, as an advocate. I know for myself, it also, a lot of ancestral trauma comes up, just hearing your experience. Like, yeah, my ancestors have been there in a different setting.
Right.
I have been there during the war in my country when somebody knocks on the door. I was like, shit, who's on the other side? Long way to go around to share and to ask actually the next question. One of the things that I know, conflict resolution, that I have witnessed, and I have also been on the receiving end, is the difference between holding somebody accountable and being served with, oh, you're just divisive because you're bringing attention to those issues. Bring everybody together and don't, you know, I'm like, no, there's steps that need to be taken. So can we just dive right into
that? Ooh, I love that question, because it's really true that uh, accountability is incredibly important. I don't care what it is that you are dealing with around conflict, whether it is the large and deep and heavy complex issues around racism and all of the isms, right? Sexism, homophobia, all of those, whether it's that or just that you spoke to your neighbor the wrong way and it led to a really big argument. Accountability is really important. People want to skip over and just go, okay, sorry, and then keep going, but you're not repairing the harm done when you're not able to say, I see my behavior in this. I see how it escalated things. I see how my history, right? The history of my ancestors has contributed to discrimination and pain. You cannot just go to sorry. And sometimes people can't even get the apology. People just get they're acting as if it's all over and nothing has even been said about taking accountability for your own behavior. So that's a part of conflict that's a huge step that we have to learn to say, I hear what you're saying. I can look at my behavior. I get it. And I am saying I own that. How do I make amends here? And I want to move forward with this relationship, with this work, whatever it is. And we've got to come to that place as individuals and as people living in the countries and the states and the cities and the towns and the neighborhoods and the families that we live in.
Yeah. So the next question then becomes, we're seeing right now partaking in the conversation, partaking in a change. There's the authentic drive behind it, and then there's the participation for trophy, for like a tokenism in a way,
Right,
and
yeah.
turning the movement into whatever's gonna put just the right copy out there that I can stamp it out and profit from it.
Yeah.
What are some of the ways that we can start noticing and not just holding companies accountable through, talking to them, but actually with our own money? What are some of the ways that we can see, okay, this is the right way, this is the wrong way, for the lack of a better word?
Yeah. It's so interesting. For the longest time, I did most of my conflict resolution work in the education system, all over the world, right? So I've been in so many schools and worked with administrators and teachers and students and parents, the whole nine, right? And one of the things that really bothered me is that all these decisions were made for children, for young people, even teenagers, without their voices, without saying, what do you think? What would be good for you? What would you want? And so I say the same thing when we're talking about companies or we're talking about anyone who really wants to be earnest about the work that they do when it comes to any of the inclusion and diversity and equity is, are you listening to the folks whose experiences represent what you are trying to repair, right? Trying to change. That start there. What do folks want? Because people want to start to do these, like we call performative things, or they want to say, oh, we're just going to check the box and make sure that we are hiring more people. But is that what is needed? And if what is needed is to do better at hiring, who are you including in making those plans to make sure that you are doing that well? Because one of the things I can tell you that's a huge issue, I'll speak for not for the Black community, but I'll speak from my own experience as a Black American woman, is that we don't tend to be listened to or believed. So if we get you to listen to us, you don't believe us. You don't believe us when we say that there's racism. You don't believe us when we say that we are not respected by far too many police officers. I'll never say that all are in that same group, but I will say far too many. When you have the experiences of all of the names that I can name, right, in the past just even 3 years, who have met their death, right, at the hands of police officers, I'm sorry, there's a problem there. And we've been yelling and screaming about that, and we are not believed. So start with the people who you want to really affect change with. Listen to them, ask them the important questions, and then really start to look at making sure that as you start to devise plans to do better, to make change, that they're also included in not only making those plans, but also implementing them in the programs that I'm sorry, in businesses and wherever it is, if it's in your homes, wherever it is, we need to be heard. We need to be consulted. We need to be believed.
Yeah. And I want to say thank you for sharing that, because in a way it just feels so unfair that you have to consistently relive your experience, relive your trauma, consistently justify your own experience
Yeah.
in hopes that somebody finally hears.
Yeah.
And yes, there's this level when it comes to anger, the disappointment, the resentment, the just being so fed up
Yeah.
with it, having to do that and being the educator over and
Yeah.
over and over again, when it's actually the white community that actually needs to do the freaking work.
Yeah, exactly.
um, like a babysitting us,
Yeah, that it consistently, like it's like a Groundhog Day. Oh, this day is playing over and over and over again. Didn't I just do this right with the last group? Right? Didn't I just do this at my last job? Yeah, absolutely.
So you mentioned before speaking in schools and looking around, and my girls are now in school. They're 7
Hmm.
and 9.
Right.
And we have consistent conversations about, oh, mommy, this is what we learned today. I was like, okay, great. Now let's take a look at the other side of the coin.
Yeah,
Now let's
nice.
take a bigger picture here. Now
Yeah,
let's take the
nice.
detail that they left out. They're they're like, oh, really? What? They didn't tell us that. I was like, of course not, because
Hmm.
it's gonna make you feel bad, and they don't want to
Right.
make you feel bad. But uh
Right.
but where is this tipping point? Because when we look around at educational system, um, it's like, oh, these are the values: be kind, be nice,
Hmm.
be inclusive, be
Right.
considerate, do the right thing. And then you look at the adults, and like, what happened?
Yeah, that's right. Because we're not setting the model. We are not doing that. And I want to go back to something because this just isn't said enough. And so when you say to your children, yeah, they don't teach you that because they don't want you to feel bad. I want people to understand what that really means. So what we're really saying is all these years and into the future, it's okay if Black, Indigenous, and people of color feel bad. It's okay if their kids feel bad, right? Because that's what's been happening their entire lives.
Yeah, but it's
But it's
them.
not
Yeah.
okay, right? But it's not okay if white children feel badly,
Exactly. Oh,
right?
or they would say, oh, they're too young. I was like, no, if they're young, old enough to experience, you're old enough to learn about it.
That's
At least
right.
learn
And
about it.
and I want to say that it may be the experience that there are people who are doing the work whose intention is to make people feel bad and live in that. That's not my work. My work is, yeah, that's a part of it. You're going to feel these feelings if you're really doing the work. But also, if you really want to be a part of change, you're going to sit with, feel, and move through those feelings and help them to propel you to continue to do the work. Because quite frankly, when you're talking about racism, we're all feeling badly. I'm not feeling any better that you're feeling guilty, right? I'm not. It doesn't remove my pain. So I'm not in here so that we all feel painful together and we just sit here and feel badly. I'm here so that white people understand that that's a part of the process, that your children too can feel that and go through that, just as our children, I'm sorry, but our children are not able to really go through that because it continues on. But you're capable. It's what I say in my groups. It's like, y'all can feel the pain. You're capable. And then you can move through it as well. And I don't hear that being talked enough. I only hear that our kids as white kids should not feel guilty or shame, but I don't hear then what you're giving permission for is the continued pain of Black and Brown Indigenous uh, children who are LGBTQ. I don't hear that you're acknowledging that they've been in pain for so long. And so there's got to be a way out. And this is a way out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, my heart is racing right now.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
um, you know, I love the opportunity to have the conversation like this with folks who would say, "Oh, I am not a racist. I
Yeah.
have Black friends and they look just like me." And I'm like,
Mhm.
and that's exactly where you said it.
Yeah.
The ingrained is like, what are you expecting? So,
Mhm.
um, when it comes to conflict resolution in companies, in addition to what you said earlier, holding people accountable and having conversation and including them in the change, meaning asking people who are actually living, what do you actually want?
Right.
How do we reach on the other side of the aisle, so to speak, to those who don't want to participate?
Mhm,
Do we just
mhm,
exclude them from a community? Do we
mhm,
just let them do their own thing and
mhm,
hopefully eventually they'll come to the right side? Do we keep
mhm.
fighting with them?
Yeah, nice. Yeah, one of the things that I've experienced with there are two companies in particular that I see that are on this route that are really committed to addressing and having the conversations and making the changes, as difficult as they may be. They've committed. This is who we are as a company. We are not there yet, but this is where we're going. And so everybody's invited to the conversation, but we are going to keep moving forward in this direction. And eventually, those who don't want to participate are going to have to make a choice. Either you are going to say, well, this is who the company is now, and I'm going to be a part of it, or you're going to say, is this really the company for me anymore? That's really where you have to go. It's not that as soon as you make this decision, this is where we want to go, you're like, anybody who doesn't like it, get out. It's that this is where we're going. These are the steps we're taking. Everyone's invited to move forward in this way. But you not participating is not going to get us off of this direction. This is the direction of the company. Listen, I know that it may not be easy to find a job, but there are companies out there that aren't committed to this. So if you aren't committed to it, you can find someplace else that isn't also, and you can work there if that is the decision that you make. But that's really where the companies are. They're not giving the ultimatum in nasty ways. They're simply stating, this is who we are. This is where we're going. All are invited. We're going to give you the resources to get there. We know they're going to be difficult conversations ahead, but we want you on board. And at some point, if you're not, then we've got to say, you have two questions in front of you. Am I going to go get on board, or am I going to say, I don't think this is the place for me anymore, and I need to be somewhere where I can be me?
Yeah. And I love that because now this is where the rubber meets the road, right? Talking the talk is one thing, but actually walking that talk is something entirely different. And I know for myself that over the past year and a half, 2 years, I have released friends and family from my family. I'm not
Mhm,
participating in some gatherings anymore. It's like, but we love you. I was like, I'm sorry.
mhm,
I personally cannot show up knowing that your ideologies, your complacency is hurting
mhm,
somebody else, even if
mhm,
it's a stranger,
mhm.
but your family is like, yeah, I don't care,
Right. Yeah.
Um, and I know it's just like a small example, but right now the holidays are coming,
Yeah.
and there's pressure everywhere around us, like, oh, we're just not going to talk about the topic just to keep peace. But
Right.
this is how we
Right.
get to this point to begin with.
Yes, yes, it's true. I do a 6 month uh, program called On the Matter of Race, and we talk about that there our folks in this program is for white people. It's only for white people who really want to learn about racism and do something about it. And holiday times is a time where people are like, oh my gosh, this uncle or my mom or my brother or grandfather, or grandmother, all of these folks, right? I really want to have a conversation with them. And, their thing is, no, don't disrupt the holiday. Like we want peace. But if you're not willing to have the conversation ever, then how do I do that? And there is that decision to say, I could do it in a small way, I could do it in a big way. It's up to me as to what I want to do, but to let it slide, to continue to use the excuse of, I don't want to disrupt things, it is only continuing to be complicit. Yeah.
Can we elevate the conversation a little bit?
Yeah.
I fully trust that people in the audience, perhaps they don't even have to have that explained,
Hmm.
but we'll do it anyway. We're talking right now as personal accountability
Right.
and like direct actions that we individually can take in our social circles. But can we talk about the path that this movement is carving out? Like, what does equality even mean, and equity
Mm,
in the
right.
bigger scale? Why equality is not quite enough?
Yeah. I'm just we got along. These questions are fire. Okay. So yeah, because I think a lot of people don't understand that, because equality means you assuming that we're all starting from the same place, right? So you need you and I need the same resources, when the reality is that's not how the world runs. That's not how the United States runs. It's like we're all in different places. And so while you might say pull yourself up by your bootstraps, but we didn't get the bootstraps yet. We didn't get the boots yet. So equity would mean you get the boots, right? So that then you can start following the path, and we can help you follow a path to success. But if you're going to blame me for not being able to pull myself up from my bootstraps when I don't even have the boots or the straps, then that is not equity. So seeing everybody as being, we're all equal and we all have the access to success, the same success and the same opportunities, that's absolutely fundamentally untrue. And so we have to be able to look at where are the inequities and how do we then address them. It's like looking, if you're parents and you have children, you can't possibly believe that all of your children are the same and they all need the same thing throughout their entire lives, that you can talk to each of your children in the same way and they respond at their best because they're just one being, really, so I'm treating them equally. But that's not equity, because I have two sons and I can tell you that what works for one is different for the other. And so I'm not approaching in the same way. And maybe my oldest doesn't like it, or maybe my youngest doesn't like, oh, you treat him better, but he needs this, right? This is what he needs right now. And so over the years they've gotten to see that that's how I'm doing it. But that's really what equity is about, is understanding that, yes, we are all human beings, and yes, we deserved to be treated equally, but we're not in equal places. So then we have to talk about equity. What is going to put each of us in a space of being able to have our best success? And that looks different for different groups, different people. It just does. That's how it is.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. A couple of things are coming through right now. Doing so, I mean, the objection sometimes that we hear is then, oh, this is not a socialistic place. This is
Right.
not,
Yeah.
now we're bringing communism. I was actually by somebody really close to me before we cut ties. I got an email calling me Chinese communist because of standing up. I was like, okay, then
Well,
if that's how you see me, then sure,
mhm.
I will
And that's who I am, right?
Moving the
For you.
walls. But
Right,
um,
yes.
at the end of the day, I feel that resistance is coming up out of fear that it's like a piece of a pie that we're gonna run out of
Right.
resources if we
Yeah.
start bringing this thing
That
called equity.
scarcity mentality, yes.
Not a piece of a pie. It actually
Yeah,
stands.
well, first of all, we don't even know what the resources are because there are so many that have so much more than
Yeah,
so many. And like we talk about the 1%. I mean, come on. So we already know that there are lots of resources. It's just who has the most
yeah,
and how they use them, those resources, to stay in power and to keep other folks from actually accessing those same resources and being able to live their best lives. So before you start talking about scarcity, start looking at how resources are even being gained and used in this country and even and throughout the world, right? And to be honest, if you can't start here, you've got to go back. That's why we talk about history that's not been taught, and we're talking about the global history that's not been taught. So you can talk about how this country, these people from this country all want to come here. Well, can we talk about the history of how their resources were stripped and who was that by? Do you even know that? So history is important, folks. We need to learn that and we need to apply it. But before we start talking about scarcity, we really do need to look at what is available and who's keeping that
yeah,
availability and that access
exactly.
from so many people.
Exactly. I keep bringing up in those conversations also, being educated overseas. I remember from fifth to eighth grade and then through entire high school, one of the important subjects in school was also geography.
Yeah.
So not just the history, but n- having an insight and understanding of how something small that can happen on one side of the planet will make an impact
Yes.
on the other side. I think it's a really great advantage then when you come to a place like this that, bluntly said, it's America centered, white American centered education.
Hmm.
You lose this window of opportunity of showing you're literally cutting your own legs at the knees in a
Yeah.
long run by being so narrow-minded. And
Yeah.
right now we're back in the same conversation. I know it's like it revolves around critical race theory, which has been mislabeled,
Yeah.
misrepresented to begin with. But again, it creates this funnel of we're just gonna shovel everything back into this tiny, tiny box, as opposed to let's open up our minds, let's give people the
Hmm.
opportunity to
Hmm.
learn, because what we have been doing, obviously, it's not working.
Right. Right, exactly. Even though people are fighting for it to continue, it is not working. It isn't that uh, Black and brown children are less than, and that is why they don't see themselves in history, and that is why you can't attribute all the inventions that have been that they've invented, to them. No, it's because the folks who are writing the story are making sure that the story reflects white people and the history in this country in the best light and removing or never even placing in other people. And everybody else really does have a place in that history. It's if you think about it, you talk about American history and then you go Black history and Hispanic history and Native. No, it's all American history. We are not an elective. We have been a vital part of this country. And unfortunately, when it comes to Black people, it's through the history of slavery, but it still does not mean that we've not been a vital part of this country. And so when you talk about things like what we have contributed and you do it in a way that makes it look meager or subservient to what white people have done and contributed, then you are really doing such a disservice to everybody, white children included, because so many of people in my On the Matter of Race group, when they find out, what do you mean I was never taught that, they are appalled and feel very disappointed that this was kept from them when it is simply a part of history.
Yeah. How can we, as a community, as individuals, earn the trust? Because the trust is the first thing that it takes for somebody to open up to even be heard.
Right.
It brings me back to, like, you can tell a child as much as you want, oh, just tell me, I'm listening. But they're not going to open up because there's
That's
no
right.
history knowing that they will actually be heard. You can listen,
That's
but
right.
you're not hearing, and then whatever
That's
you're going
right.
to follow through, it's like, yeah, that was a waste of my energy.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that we can do to build the trust, to earn the trust, and to create a space where communities, whether it's indigenous, Black, African American, LGBTQ, even, in this conversation, I think a lot of time we exclude the community, disability and
That's
ability
right.
in
That's
different
right.
forms.
Hmm.
For them to even have the courage and to even be willing and take, say, okay, fine, I'll share. Because
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's real complex. I believe it's really complex, especially now. uh, People are tired. People are fed up. This is so, we're in 2021, about to go into 2022, and we're still having this conversation, right? And it's
it's not
exhausting.
new. And it's not new. I think the only difference
No,
is now with the social media, at least it's in our face. Before
right.
it was nicely
But
hidden.
yeah, but it's exhausting. People who look like me, who remember their grandparents talking about this, and their grandparents were talking about how their own parents were. So this is long. So people are exhausted, but even still, there are people willing to share if they are shown that they will be listened to. I think that it's got to be about people doing their work, about doing everything that they can to start to learn about it, whatever it is. So if it's disability, I mean, I can remember where I was doing a workshop, and a friend of mine who heads up an organization for disabled Americans, actually not just Americans, for disabled people, he said, there's a very easy way to do your slides so that people who are visually impaired can actually see them. But I didn't know that. I'm grateful that he told me that. And I'm grateful that I was able to say, oh, hey, let's hop on it, right? As opposed to, look, I don't have time, whatever it is, that I was open to hearing that and understanding that and learning about that. So I think that we have to be seeking out other opportunities to learn, whether it is through books, whether it is through groups who are giving the information, doing workshops, offering opportunities for dialogues. We have to be a part of that. We have to engage in real interest and friendships with people who are different from ourselves, not just are like us in every way and then maybe different in where they live or something, but that truly are different from us, but it's genuine. And so we're not asking them to teach us. We're actually either working side by side with them or living side by side with them and getting to know people and being willing to have the relationships. I started On the Matter of Race because two white women who were former clients who then became friends, and we were in the same business organization, right? Jennifer Kemp's organization. They said to me, we lived in all white neighborhoods our whole lives, and we are now, because of this organization, making friends with people of color. And they're talking about racism, and we either don't believe them. They were honest. We either don't believe them or we don't know what they're talking about, but it continues to come up. And we feel like, how can we be real friends if we're not learning about this? There's some genuine wanting to learn and do the work. That really does have to happen for people. That if you are in homogeneous situations, you've got to really look to place yourself outside of those things. And listen, we're in an age where you can go online, you can be in groups where so there's not really the excuse there that, oh, I only see these people every day and they all like me. No, there are plenty of groups out there that do come together for the specific purpose of people who are very different from each other, learning about all of this, not just race, as you said, but about all of these things. And we've got to get ourselves to that place with working for companies where it's a priority, right? Because I'm going to tell you, Sarah, from little, it has always blown my mind that people can't see the opportunities in difference. Like, oh my gosh, what that adds to my life. It's just like, what? You really can't just see that people who live in other places do things very differently, and that you can listen, you can absorb, you can really respect and learn, like, wow, there's something that I might want to do as a result of that. I mean, I've brought so much. You talked about spirituality. Well, I've spent time in a church where the Native American Indian community would come in and share a lot of their culture with us. And so things from cleansing ourselves to really being able to respect things like the circle, and where people talk and everybody has a voice and everybody listens. Like, that has enriched my life. And I can go on and on about the people in my life who are very different from me, who have really taught me things and have made me value it enough to say, I'm going to incorporate that into my life. So I've never understood how difference has been looked at as a threat or a problem. And yet I've always been a part of a society that's wanted to make me into the image of the dominant group.
Yeah. I think one of the shifts that we're starting to see, or maybe just looking through my lens and through my awareness, but it used to be like, don't talk about politics, don't talk about religion, don't talk about sex.
Don't talk about money.
And that, yes. And possibly don't talk about race and don't talk about. I was like, yeah, but this is how we got to that point, by not talking, not sharing. And then on the contrary, when you're like, well, I have friends in all the very diverse group of friends, and they never say anything to me. I was like, well, maybe that's a problem. Maybe you should take a cue why they don't do that. I know you have other commitment coming up any moment now, but can you just share more about on the race, about your program that you're starting in January? Where can people find you? How can we continue supporting you?
Absolutely, yes. On the matter of race, we are doing our next journey starting the week of January 17th. You can find me at lynnemaureenhurdle.com. That's LYNNE. And Maureen is MAUREEN. Hurdle, HURDLE.com. Information about the journey is there. Everyone needs to have an interview, because I really want to be sure that folks are in the right place and in the right space to make the commitment. And I am also I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter. I'm Lynne Maureen Hurdle on LinkedIn, and the Conflict Closer on Twitter and Instagram. So you can find all the information about On the Matter of Race there as well.
Thank you so much for your time, for your energy, for your grace. And the next time, I hope we get another opportunity, because there's the TV pilot and that. A whole different conversation.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's my next project, and I'd be happy to come back and talk with you about how that's going and what I vision for that.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
My pleasure, and thank you.